Well, the story of The Unbreakable Boy is a true story about Scott and Teresa Lorette and their two sons, Austin and Logan. Scott and Teresa meet, start falling in love. On their third date, they get pregnant with Austin, which is definitely a curveball, but they're like, hey, let's do this. Let's figure this out as we go. Austin is, as they come to find out, born with osteogenesis imperfecta, which is brittle bones disease, which is yet another curveball, but they keep, journeying and walking with that. Then they have their second son, Logan, who is born seemingly healthy, and then a few years goes by and Austin is behaving in some atypical ways, and then they have him tested and they find out that he is on the autistic spectrum. So the movie is really about a family kind of navigating those waters whilst, Scott and Teresa are still navigating, figuring out their own internal conflict in themselves, figuring out their relationship, and figuring out how best to love their children through it. And I play Scott Lorette, and
I play Austin Lorette.
There you go.
Yes, I met the real Austin Lorette. I first met him about a week into filming. He sent me a message on Instagram and said, hey, I hear you're portraying me in the movie. I'm really excited to meet you. Our family thinks that you're gonna do great. And so I messaged him back, and very quickly we got on a call together, and I was really excited to meet him. He was incredible. And then a month later, he and his family came down to the set. Well, actually, it wasn't a month later, but around 2 weeks later, he and his family came down to set, and we were able to meet them in person, and it was incredible. They're lovely people.
Mm-hmm. I think initially I had a phone call with Scott, so I got to kind of pick his brain about their story. Scott was very brave, and Teresa both, in Scott writing their story in the book, The Unbreakable Boy, that the film is based on. And so I was able to kind of glean, a little bit from those conversations. And then ultimately when they came to visit us on set, we got to, spend more time with them, learn more about their dynamic, their energy. Obviously, when you're making a film, there's some artistic liberties that are taken in, how to piece all that together. But the script that John Gunn wrote was really such a beautiful script and a great blueprint for us to follow ultimately in making sure that we were, honoring them, honoring their story. But yeah, we got to spend some really good quality time with them while we were making the film.
We were all really lovely. We were like a family on and off set. We all got along really well. It was fun. We did activities with each other off set. I remember hanging out with Zach. I remember hanging out with Gavin and Megan the most, since we were all the immediate family. We didn't see much of Patricia because she was only on for 3 days, but she was really lovely. I got a picture with her. They were all amazing.
It was a beautiful family that was really God-breathed. The movie came together quite fast and in the height of the pandemic, so we weren't really sure how it was all going to come together, if it was going to come together. And yet all of the right and perfect souls, collected in our cast and our crew. We spent really quality time off camera together, having meals, breaking bread, having fun, just leaning into the characters when we were actually on camera. I think, really doing right by the script that we were given. It was really a magical experience. Love, acceptance, and redemption.
Positivity during struggle. Well, with the 3 words there, I think it's important to show that you can be positive during times of struggle, and there's gonna be a lot of those times, but I think the movie teaches us all, like, don't hang your head and give up, like, always just keep going, be resilient, be optimistic about the future, because really, you can make any day the best day of your life, like Austin does.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, the world is a hard place, and there's a lot of pain. There's a lot of suffering in the world all the time. And we all have these ideas of the way that our life is supposed to go. You know, we have these idealized versions of ourselves that we see, of the life that we think we're supposed to be living. And when those things aren't adding up, when our expectations are not being met, that can lead to a lot of suffering, internal turmoil, anxiety, fear, anger, things like that. And I think that this film is a really beautiful example of radically accepting the life that you're given, and in doing so, finding so much beauty on the other side of that, figuring out more how to love yourself better, and therefore loving those around you even more.
I first heard of The Unbreakable Boy when Peter Facinelli brought it to us as a book. He had met the Lorette family. He just believed so strongly that this was a movie that had to be shared. And I'll tell you, Peter has been such an advocate for this film, has become a very good friend of mine, and is the biggest cheerleader in the world. Is a great friend to the Lorettes. And so I read the book while we were locked up in quarantine when COVID first hit. And it was just the perfect message for me personally at that moment, a story about gratitude in the midst of struggles, since that's what we were all feeling. And so I wrote it very quickly, and I loved this idea of telling a story of parents raising a child with autism and narrating it from the voice of the autistic child. Seemed just like a really fun, dynamic, unique, and colorful way in, because Austin has such a great voice and such a great perspective on life. So it was fun to write, and the moment we finished it, we already had a movie with Zach Levi lined up, American Underdog, a Lionsgate movie, and sent it to him to read and said, how do you feel about making 2 movies back to back in quarantine? And so that's what we did. So we shot this thing in 2020 in Oklahoma, and unbelievably, with quite a few delays, because the world has been an interesting place for the last few years, I kind of feel like it's the perfect moment to share it. And I love the heart of this movie, and I love the message of this movie, and I can't wait for people to see it. You know, every time you make a movie like this, you hope to find the right people, right, to play the right role. And it worked out really well for us that we already had a relationship with Zach Levi. And Scott, it's funny, Zach doesn't look anything like the real Scott. And yet the spirit of this character, somebody who could find joy in the midst of struggles, who's funny and charismatic, but also, you know, Scott is a guy who hit rock bottom in a lot of ways and was struggling with lots of issues. And Zach is a person who's not afraid to talk about his struggles and issues and about overcoming them and rising, you know, through those kinds of struggles. So it seemed like he was going to be able to find the levity and the humor, but still have the dimensionality. And so that was an easy choice. Once he read it and said yes, we were thrilled. Then it was about finding his family. And, you know, anyone who's seen Megan's work, like when she auditioned for this role, she was the first person I saw who read the words and made me feel like it was alive. And so we kind of just stopped the audition process at that point. And we did a chemistry read with Zach, and he was like, I love this girl. Like, can we just hire her? And we both agreed instantly. And she's incredibly talented and just a wonderful person. So, you know, then the challenge becomes finding your unbreakable boy, right? Who are we going to find that can represent the uniqueness of Austin? And Austin genuinely is kind of a 1 in a billion kid. You know, I mean, he's got brittle bone disease, he's got autism, he's got this incredible voice and personality and worldview. And so we, you know, saw a whole lot of kids. And the moment Jacob came up on screen, I smiled, and I knew that's the feeling I want to have when I see this kid. And he has the essence of Austin and is so true just to who he is. And he's intelligent, and he talks a lot, and he's full of energy. We all love that kid so much. So yeah. So, and then, you know, then we've got the interesting thing of like, he's got an imaginary friend. Who plays the imaginary friend? And Drew Powell, who's now become a dear friend of mine, was someone that Zach had worked with and recommended. Amy Acker, who plays her sister, is a dear friend of mine. And then we got Patricia Heaton to play mom. And, you know, that's so important to find this woman who could be strong and force him to confront his struggles, but still have a warmth of heart that really was what the movie needs. So yeah, I mean, I think we nailed it. I think we found a great cast and a great family, and the spirit of the movie kind of comes through all of them. I think the reason that this is the perfect time for the film, and I'm kind of glad that it's been delayed, you know, because of COVID and because of the strikes, because it's a story about gratitude in the midst of struggles. And, I think it's very evident to a lot of us now that we live in a time where there's like a lot of tension and there's a lot of people struggling in a lot of different ways. And yet this is a movie that is filled with joy and filled with the message that even in the midst of our greatest struggles, we can find gratitude, and that every day can be the best day of your life. And it's a ray of sunshine, genuinely. It's a movie that will make you smile and that will bring tears to your eyes in all the right ways. And so for me, right now, in this time in the world, I feel really grateful myself to have this message to share. I really think it's gonna make people smile, and it's gonna make people feel like everything that they have, that they can hold on to, that they can be grateful for, they will recognize when they see this film.
Well, Marcia is a lot like me, I think. We're, close to the same age, and she's that person that's been through life and is able to impart her stern wisdom to the situation that the family's in. And, when I started out in this industry, I had wonderful mentors like the late, great Linda Lavin, who just took me under her wing and really guided me and gave me encouragement and kind of showed me the ropes. And I feel Marcia is the same way, in the sense that she has been there, done that, and she knows everything's going to be okay, but the fact is her son has to step up to his responsibilities. And as long as he does that, he has family and community that will surround him and, get him through these tough times. Yeah, they're people I know, and Zach I've known for a long time. And I've shot in Oklahoma quite a bit, where we shot the movie. So it was really fun for me to join this group for the very short time I was there, and know that I'm working with friends on a true story that's very hopeful. Those are all elements that I look for when I'm working on a job. So I think that that's when those things come together. That's when this business is just the greatest. Well, it's interesting, when I was discussing the script, I have a good friend, Mako Fujimura, who's a Japanese-American artist in New York, and he does that kintsugi, I believe it's called, where you take a broken porcelain vessel and you mend it with gold so that it becomes more beautiful in its brokenness. And I mentioned that, and he was like, oh, I was just looking at that. And in fact, the little bit of swag that we got after the movie was a beautiful coffee mug that it's painted as if it was broken and put back together again. So I think that's just a great analogy, that we become more beautiful and more human through the difficulties that we go through the things that maybe temporarily break us, but we come back together because of family and because of community. And we become stronger, and we can flourish because of the difficulties we've gone through. Heart, hope, and humor. Well, there's a Chinese curse that goes, may you live in interesting times. That's a Chinese curse, and I think we're understanding that. Ever since COVID, the world has been a little topsy-turvy, especially for people in the entertainment industry, because we went through a couple strikes, our industry shut down. Streaming came in, and then that turned things upside down, and now we just had those big fires in Hollywood. So I think this is good timing for a movie that shows people struggling with issues, but shows them overcoming them. And I think we all need to be reminded we live in a great country. We have wonderful communities that surround us. We need to continue to reach out to each other, to unify, and we'll get through all this together. And I think that this real, true story is a perfect example of what we can be when we come together.
Well, this book kind of fell in my lap. My brother-in-law owned the pharmacy in New York, and Scott Lorette walked into his pharmacy and started chatting about his book that he wrote, and my brother-in-law Leon called me and said, this guy walked into my store. He wrote this book. Sounds cool. You should make it into a movie, because he doesn't know how hard it is to make a movie. And I just didn't think anything of it. And he said, he's coming to LA next week. I told him you have lunch with him. I was kind of annoyed at first, because I was like, who is this guy? What's this book? But he told me a little bit about it, and then I read it, and it really, really moved me. And so I sat down with Scott, and at first I was just kind of giving him advice, and then he said, well, maybe you should produce this with me. and I had a lot on my plate, and I wasn't sure. You know, it's hard enough to get people to read a script in LA rather than a book, and but I took it on because I really believed in his story, and it was so inspirational. I wanted to see it on screen. I mean, as an audience, as a person who liked the book, I was just like, I just want to see it up on the movie. I want to go to the movie theater and see it myself. So I took it on, and I started this journey with Scott, and you know, it was a long journey until we got it to Kingdom Story, and then they really understood what we were trying to do with it, and then we shepherded it to Lionsgate, and here we are. I mean, it's such a beautiful, that in and of itself is such a beautiful story. I always talk to Scott about Kismet, because so many synchronicities would line up that were beautiful, that would happen, and then the movie kind of just, you know, had its own journey and timing, and we were along for the ride. So I think it's a movie that's supposed to come out because people need it. You know, they need a good, beautiful, inspirational story. Yeah, I played Pastor Rick in the film. When I read the script, I saw, you know, originally I was just meant to produce it, and I said, this is a fun role, you know, and we talked about me playing it. It was a role of Pastor Rick, where Pastor Rick is a guy that to me symbolizes, you know, people often when they're going through a hard time, they alienate themselves from people. So Scott, played by Zacharylevi, was, you know, going through a time when he felt alone. You know, he didn't know how to handle things, and so he starts pushing people away, pushes his friends away, his God, you know, and then here comes Pastor Rick, who's somebody who he can look to for support. You know, somebody who can look to that's actually not a pastor who's talking down to him, but a pastor who's talking to him, and somebody who also is kind of broken and going through their own healing journey, and just another human being, not just a, you know, a person of the cloth. You get to see the human being underneath that, and so he befriends them, and is part. I think they're part of each other's healing journeys, which is really lovely. Unbreakable Boy in 3 words. I mean, it's so hard because there's so many great takeaways for this film. I'm gonna go with love, resilience, and being present. For me, there's a great message of authenticity. Austin is just so authentic to who he is, and he's not afraid to be who he is, and there's a beauty in that, and he's not afraid. He doesn't conform to you know, what people think he should wear. He just wears what he wants to wear, and there's a real beauty in that. And then being present is also something that really, I think, is a wonderful takeaway from this film, because he in every moment just sees the joy and the gratitude and the appreciation for that moment, and I want more of that. You know, I want to live more like that. So there's a moment at the end of the film where he says, this moment right here, Dad, it's the best moment ever. And he fully believes it. And he believes that about almost every moment. And at the end of the film, when the movie was over, my daughter was watching it with me, and I turned to her and said, what did you think? And she said, this moment right here, Dad, is the best moment ever. And I just literally like welled up and hugged her for a good 5 minutes. And I want that experience for everybody who goes to see this. So bring your kids, bring your family, bring your friends. You know, see it in theaters with people, because it's such a communal movie. You know, you're gonna hear people laughing, and it's infectious. You're gonna hear people crying, and it's infectious because there's a love in the air when you're watching this movie that just is so infectious. So the more people you bring and the more people that are in the theater, you're gonna feel it, you know? It's magical.
No, I never imagined that. And I simply started writing in little 3x5 spiral notebooks. I still have the first one. And it was just little bullet points about my life. What I'd started was a journey on therapy and my own, I guess, well-being and redemption and whatnot. That's how it started. And then I moved on to bigger notebooks, and then I moved on to a blog. And it was still just for myself. And then I started sharing the stories more and more over social media, which made it a lot easier. And I started seeing the response from folks. And there was just an inkling of something that, you know, hey, people kind of like these stories. They're funny, quirky, goofy, sad, meaningful, and only later would I realize that you know, some folks were seeing their own stories, you know, come across in ours. So that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, it's a really funny story. My brother-in-law owns a pharmacy called Patcher Pharmacy in New York City, and Scott walked into it, and he's chatted with my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law called me and said, "This guy walked into my store. You should read his book and make it into a movie." And I was like, "Okay." And he said, "He's coming out to LA." And I told him you have a meeting with him. And I was kind of annoyed that he made a meeting with some stranger I don't know in a book that I haven't read. But I read the book and I thought, this is really beautiful. What a beautiful story. There were so many themes of that book that really hit home with me, from someone who was broken, who was trying to heal himself, to faith and resilience and just being present in the moment and having full gratitude for that moment. I could list many more, but all of those themes in one story. And I thought, at first I was just giving Scott guidance. He had producers on board, and I was giving him, he didn't know Hollywood at all, so I said, we'll expect this, and maybe you should try this. And then when those producers fell off, he said, well, do you want to produce it with me? And to be honest, I had so much on my plate, I didn't. I thought, well, I do, but it's so hard getting someone to read a book in our industry. I mean, it's hard enough to get them to read a script. I dropped off the book to my agents, and 6 months later, I don't think they still hadn't read it. So whenever I had meetings and I thought it was the right story, I would pitch it, and we pitched it to this one company. And all of a sudden they liked it. They wanted to make it as a TV series. They had a writer on board, and we were so excited. We were high-fiving, and then that writer got a TV show and had to step off, and we waited for him. And then he got a second season, and they came to us and said, well, this writer got a second season. Do you want to wait another 6 months? Otherwise, the kind of steamed out. And I said to Scott, do you want to take the book back and try somewhere else? And I was kind of hoping he said, let's keep it here, because I had a bird in hand. And he said, no, let's take it back. And when I took it back, there was a moment of me going, I don't know where else to take this book. I kind of felt like maybe it was the, I didn't think it was gonna get made, but I kept, his story is a story about resilience, and so I was like, I have to keep going. And shortly after, I had a meeting with Kingdom Story, and Kevin really understood the book and got it. And I got a call from them saying they wanted to be a part of it.
When somebody said, and it might have been John Gunn, who wrote and directed it, said, hey, what do you think of this as a movie? And it was one of those moments that like light bulbs just start flashing. And I was like, of course, this is absolutely a movie, because it's got our DNA, our fingerprints sort of all over it without us. It was really a profound moment when I remember when it happened. And so we started to, John's like, I got a take, let's put a script together. And he wrote a script, his take was great, his script was great. And then COVID hit and disaster struck. And we all of a sudden were like, okay, how are we gonna get this movie made? But I think that's the thing that's so special about The Unbreakable Boy, is that no matter what obstacles get thrown in its way, it found a way to get made, and it's found a way to get released. Like, we all want to have films that we go, I mean, the popcorn movies are fun if you just kind of want to escape, but then to have a film that really teaches you, I can be present in this moment. I can really love my neighbor, love my fellow human, no matter what they're going through, in a way that is unlike anything that I've ever been challenged before. And sometimes just as simple as giving somebody a hug all of a sudden opens this dialogue and this conversation, which you see shown out in the movie. One of Scott's favorite lines that he's shared all day. I wish you say it. Go ahead. Come on, you're good at it.
I wish that I could enjoy anything as much as Austin enjoys everything.
So beautiful.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. So, way to go, Lionsgate. We love you guys, and thank you for getting this movie out into the world and really getting behind the message that is The Unbreakable Boy.
And I'm super proud that it's going wide in theaters, because, it's easy to just throw movies out on streaming nowadays, and the competition of all these action movies. But this is a movie that needs a communal experience. There's an audience there that when you sit with a bunch of people, there's this love that radiates in the room, and you feel it. I watched it with my daughter, and at the end of the movie, Austin says, "This moment right here is the best moment ever." And so the movie ended, and I said to my daughter, "Well, what do you think?" And she said, "Dad, this moment right here is the best moment ever." And every time I think of that, it makes me want to tear up. I just hugged her for like 5 minutes. I want that for everybody that comes to watch this movie. You know, take your family, take your friends, and just feel that love in the room.
I'll answer that quick because I've watched this, especially as we get close to the release. I'm hosting screenings and watching it significantly. I don't get sick of watching this movie, so that's a sign right there. But I have started to call people Daddy-O, and that has never happened before. Actually, I called my own dad Daddy-O the other day. My brother and I took him out to lunch, and I'm like, hey, what's up, Daddy-O?
That's great.
It's so great. It's like the infectious spirit of Austin is just that. It's so infectious.
The way that John nailed so many aspects of it, there's one that, I don't know if you guys felt this, but where Austin's walking up the stairs, he's got his Back to the Future neon hat on. He's trailing Zach, who plays me, and he says, I'm gonna code by genre, by this. And Zach is just going, yeah, okay, I'm going to the bathroom. It's so perfect because I do it every day. It's every day. And then he transfers his energy, because Dad closed the door in his face, to Megan, to Teresa, and she just gives that look. And it's so authentic because it's who we are.
Yeah.
That's one of the moments in the movie that one of the first moments where I saw it and I just went, OMG. And I looked at my wife and I'm like, that happens multiple times a day.
I mean, that resonates with every parent, because as a dad too, there's those moments where you just kind of need a break, you know? But you love them so much, and there's so much joy and so much love from your kid, and there's such a gift because you learn so much from them. And one of the things I love about the movie is that, you know, it teaches you that when you're parenting, you're teaching, but you're also learning. And there's so much of me that I see in my son that I'm like, oh, those are things that I need to fix it myself, you know? He gets frustrated so quickly, I get frustrated so quickly. So they're little mirror images of each other. But it's a movie that has so many themes. It's like, it's so hard to narrow down one. One of my favorites is authenticity, because Austin is so authentic to who he is, and that's a beautiful theme to walk away with. You know, just being okay and being authentic to who you are, being present in that moment, and enjoying every moment with gratitude and appreciation. That's hard, and he's able to do that in every moment. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of themes that'll resonate with a lot of people.